Good morning, everybody. It is 10 o'clock sharp. My name is Karyn Altman. I am the Deputy Director of the Pima County Public Library, and I am honored to welcome everyone to our author talk with Carlos Valenzuela, hosted by the library's LGBTQ+ Services Committee and our partners at Southern Arizona Senior Pride. This event is made possible by the generous contributions of the Friends of the Pima County Public Library, who have supported our author talks from the beginning. I'd like to give a quick shout out to all of the LGBTQ+ Services Committee members, past and present, who for 25 years have brought programs and services and resources and fun to our very diverse queer community here in Pima County. In particular, I'd like to recognize those who are putting today's event together, and that would be Victoria Villanueva, Rachel Scott, Ray Baca, and Caitlin Sparks. Thank you so much for your work on this event. Now, today's event is one of 5 we're hosting throughout the year to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the library's LGBTQ+ Services Committee. If you missed the first event with Jessica P. Pride speaking about her book, Black Love Matters, the video will be available on the library's YouTube page, as will this one. Next month, we will feature author T. Franklin. But this month, we are proud to feature author Carlos Valenzuela, presenting his debut novella, Letters to Young Carlos. Mr. Valenzuela comes from the border towns of Agua Prieta and Douglas. He's quite accomplished. He holds a master's degree in international management. He's worked for Vidal Sassoon, Levi Strauss. He's worked in Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, China. You can also read his work on his blog, www.carlos-valenzuela.com. Carlos wrote this, his first novella, in his 70s. So we thought it was only appropriate to co-host the event with Southern Arizona Senior Pride and have their board chair, Bruce Hyland, interview Carlos later in the event, to be followed by a Q&A with the audience. Bruce himself is a very accomplished retired businessman, professor, and management consultant. He has volunteered with Senior Pride for many years and is currently the chair of the board of directors. And I want to say that I'm a huge fan of Southern Arizona Senior Pride, which was founded in 2004 as a program of Wingspan. And I was involved with Wingspan at the time, and I remember signing up for the newsletters. I was in my 30s, but I thought one day the resources and the community that this group is creating will be relevant to me. And well, that time has arrived. So I'm really excited to be a part of this with both of you. One little housekeeping matter. There is a live transcript option at the bottom of your screen for anyone who would like automatic captions. Now, without further ado, please welcome our award-winning author, Carlos Valenzuela.
Thank you very, very, very much. And I'm honored to be here. I'm going to start off by thanking people because I get so wrapped up in these presentations, and the topics of the book just take me along that I wind up leaving a venue without saying thank you to the library, LGBTQ committee, to you personally, to Bruce Hyland, my eternal guardian angel, and to Senior Pride, an organization that I right now volunteer for, and I'm sure I will need in years to come. So thank you all for having me.
Carlos, before you jump into this, might I say what we're going to be doing here so they have a sense of what you're going. So Carlos is going to start with the presentation for about 20 minutes. Then I'm going to interview him for about 20 minutes. Then we'll do Q&A for 15 minutes and give Carlos the last 5 minutes to wrap it up. So that's the process. And at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button. If you would type your questions in on that, and when we come to the Q&A session, I will read them to Carlos.
Thank you. Thank you.
One more.
Sure.
Carlos has asked me to gently guide him on timing, because he just told you how much fun he has telling stories. So I'm not being rude if I gently guide.
No, we love you. Don't worry. You know, it's wonderful to do this today, because it's been a little bit over a year since Young Carlos was published. And if you are a writer or an avid reader with us today or viewing this, you probably know that books sort of have a life cycle: birth, adolescence, maturity, and then they sort of go a little bit away or become a resource. And in that transition, the feedback from the actual readers is remarkable. And so I'm going to give you some ideas as to what the book is about and what my rationale for writing it. But more importantly, the many insights provided to me by you, the readers, which I think were astonishing. The title of the book, Letters to Young Carlos, it's not an autobiography. There's a little story behind that my best friend and I one day decided that it would be great if we could send letters to when we were young, kind of like hindsight is perfect, you know? Oh, if I had only known, I would have done this. So we were talking about that, and I retired and came back and started writing, and those letters, and I just called them Letters to Young Carlos, and it's another very long story I won't get into. It became a book. But the story the readers have pointed out to me is definitely about a young boy, gay boy, growing up in the late 50s on the border of Agua Prieta, Sonora, and Douglas, Arizona. And it's about his struggles of coming out and how the elder Carlos, who is now at the start of the story in a nursing home, thinking, you know, I wonder if all this that I went through is valuable to anybody else. And he starts penning the letters, and around the letters, the story developed. But the book also addresses and starts off with sort of like an homage to memory. How critical and crucial and beautiful memories are. And for many of us in the queer community, how healing they can be. So if you allow me, I will read you a little bit from the preface of the book, which is the framework for the story. I had it totally, there we go. One cannot suppress past lives because they no longer fit in the present. Nothing can erase memories of my days growing up on the border. Sheer white curtains billowing free from an open window, ushering the smell of first raindrops on parched soil. A local orchestra plays on a summer night as I dance around the kiosk at the Plaza Azueta. The tall pine tree, whose thick trunk I leaned against for my papa to measure my height, is no longer there. But I still see the tree with my mind's eye. I still feel my father's love, reassuring me I am taller than I was 2 days ago. My mama lit that same tree with tiny blue lights in December, to the beat of my anxious young heart. The echo of her sweet laughter will forever live in my heart. Still today, my spirits lift, sensing a woman's joy. We love to relive the moments. Memories eternalize experiences and rejuvenate the spirit, if only momentarily, just like delicate morning dew refreshes tender green and vanishes with the light of day. Oh, and the eternal bond of friendship. How is it the universe provides that special someone just when the world seems darkest? When I felt I shared everything and nothing with everyone, I learned to love the person. Not because they were perfect, but because seeing their perfection in my life. Some hearts feel so familiar, as if they somehow knew each other before they met. I am a collection of these strangers' love. My heart is a rich repository of all the ways I've loved and been loved. A divergent heart subsisting on lukewarm understanding knows that stealth indifference, far more bewildering than outright rejection, is incompatible with belonging. I identified early on with silent voices at odds with imposed expectations. Starting when society judged my existence as an aberration. Why me remains a mystery, but one where resiliency of the human spirit triumphs. As Elder Carlos writes, it's painful to learn love doesn't come from those given to you, but from those you must find along the way. And young Carlos grows up at a time in the 50s, 60s, which seemed so much simpler, but I would argue that only on the surface, because underneath, beneath, there was quite a bit of turbulence, especially if you were gay. Well, he didn't even know what gay was. His father and his mother were not perfect, but his father wanted him to be a cowboy. They both had one son, and the son hopefully would be a cowboy, except the son loved to go to the movies and wanted to dance like Fred Astaire. So he would do the things that were required of him, but always feeling like an outsider. And readers pointed out to me that they read the book, and what they picked up was, yes, this young boy was gay, but it's really about not belonging in any way. Physically, emotionally, financially, being born, as we used to say, on the wrong side of the tracks for society at the time. So anybody that felt that they didn't belong has a little bit of a cathartic experience, I understand, from reading the chapters in young Carlos. So one of the first letters that Elder Carlos writes to young Carlos is that letter specifically, the letter to tell him, I love you. And you know, you are beautiful just the way you are. And I'm sure that in reality, sitting in that nursing home, he would have longed to fly back and hug him. So he wrote his first letter based on trying to make him understand that he was all right. So he says the following: "Dear young Carlos," no, he didn't say that. Here we go. "Dear young Carlos, it's okay to be different. It's okay not to be like everyone else. You come from a world nobody yet understands, and it's painful to learn love doesn't come from those given to you, but from those you must find along the way. You will clash with the righteous, the bully, and the whisperer. Your mere presence shakes the foundation of a narrow sliver of happiness some have managed to carve out for themselves. Try not to take it personally. You are perfect just the way you are. Nothing others do or say is because of you, but a projection of their own reality. To be free, you will need to leave behind many things you now love. This will bring you great sorrow. Stay strong. Trust your heart, because despite the odds, you win. Eventually, you will understand why you are who you had to be. Your life plants seeds for a better tomorrow, for those who will come after you. You will never forget those who touched your heart, regardless if they healed or broke it, and you will forgive them all. Most of all, you will forgive yourself. Remember, I love you, and I will never abandon you. Elder Carlos." When I wrote that letter, I was home, and I do a considerable amount of handwriting on a notebook. And I'm glad I was home, because when I wrote that letter, I just burst into tears. Something came up, and I had to get up from my desk, and I ran. I remember the only thing I could grab a hold of was toilet paper, because I couldn't even find Kleenex. It was that type of cathartic moment for me, and I think it has been so for many others. But it is okay to be who we are and to not totally fit. And today, it seems like it wasn't quite that big of a deal, but in the 50s and in the 60s, there was really only one prototype of man and woman. It was so binary that any deviation made you really odd. Another topic that is popular with the readers is the topic of friendship, which is addressed strongly in the book. Young Carlos befriends a little neighbor whose name is Tulio, who is about his age. And Tulio comes over and invites him to come and play at his house on Saturdays, and play Saturday morning theater, which they would dress up and sing and dance and lip sync for the little kids in the neighborhood. Well, this was remarkable for young Carlos. He could not believe that there was anybody that even resembled what the things that he had in his heart. And Tulio and Carlos admit to each other that they like the theater and they like singing and dancing, and then that they like boys and girls, and then that they like only boys as they go through life together. And Tulio will be in the stories because he continues on to the sequel, which I'm writing now. So Tulio was an important moment of friendship. So when Carlos meets Tulio, Elder Carlos writes him this particular letter. Dear young Carlos, you found a real friend, one who hears the song in your heart and will sing it back to you if you forget. One with whom you can stand naked and bare your soul without shame. A real friend is a master teacher. Tulio will teach you that friendship is defending your friend's happiness, no matter what it is. Always know what a friend needs and be there for them. Many friends will say they feel your pain, but only the sincerest heart feels your joy. There's no friend like the one that knows you since you were a child. Love him like a brother. Miles will separate you, but everything will always remain the same. This is no ordinary friendship. So young Carlos goes on to meet Jesse, the school hunk. This is like 9th grade, very young still. And Jesse is a player and seduces Carlos in the park at the school picnic. Carlos, of course, falls in love with him. And the story develops. Young Carlos' story is really about two loves. The romantic love he feels for Jesse and the attraction to intimacy and eroticism with that. And another very profound love he feels for Tulio without the passion of intimacy. And this exploration, to me, begins to scratch the surface of many things. One thing is genderless love. I mean, love to me seems to just be love to different degrees. And in this case, Carlos was experiencing both of them at the same time. The aspect of love that triumphs in the book is that you must love yourself in order to be able to love others. And I see Bruce coming on, and I think we might be moving on.
I can't wait to go back and reread it this afternoon, Carlos. You inspired me yet again. Let's, since this is the library and we want to support a lot of the readers and even new writers that might be coming on, a couple of questions for you. I'm going to tease you because I love you so much. As Karyn said, you wrote your first book in your 70s. Aren't you too old to write a new book?
Well, that's what I thought. And but apparently there were some people that liked it. I was very surprised. I took a screenwriter's course with the U of A program. And because I couldn't get into a writing course. And so they offered me a screenwriting course. I took it and I learned the elements of a story, and I used that. And eventually the teacher from that course became interested in the story, and I wound up publishing it. And it was I don't know, I mean, this is not for me to say, but it went on to win 5 awards. So, I mean, when I first saw the first award, Bruce, I thought they'd made a mistake. I said, what? This must not be me. And no, it was. So yeah, it was. If you're listening to this and you think you have a story to tell, and we all have a story to tell, and you want to write it, write it. You don't necessarily have to publish it. There's a reason that I think that you feel like writing that. So I would write it.
Thanks. You mentioned there your surprise at its success.
Yes.
And I know that you also keep a real close contact with your readers and people on your blogs and all of this. Who's reading your book, Carlos?
I have not surveyed them scientifically, but I would say 75% of the readers are probably middle-aged women, straight women, which makes me very happy. I mean, I would love the queer community to also read it, but I like it because part of my idea with the book was to get rid of the idea that this is still a choice. A lot of people still think we decided to be perverts or be gay. And the book, classically, one of the first comments that I received was from a woman I've known forever. And she said, I've always wondered why you would choose, a person like you would choose to be gay. And now I understand, and I have more respect for you and the gay community. And yeah, and so I think a lot of people are finding out a little bit more of the genesis of being queer, and I'm pleased. But that's who reads it.
You and I've had conversations that you're also discovering interesting things in the feedback from your readers out there, of younger versus older, how they interpret it or what they get from it, and straight versus gay. Can you just give us an insight of some of the feedback you're getting?
Well, the younger people who are in general, the young people today are so amazed. I mean, I live in a building downtown Tucson, and it has quite a few young people, which I try to touch because they are so amazing. I have great hopes for the future. They don't see anything. They're colorblind. They don't care about anything. But the only thing they're amazed about is, like, they cannot imagine that there was a time when something like being gay was such a bad thing. I mean, they always know that it's hard, but that's their but most of them love the book, but they're more with it already. They kind of go, yeah, sure, I see how that would happen. The older people, I mean anybody over 40 that might be reading the book, really, especially the men, really were surprised. I had a group of cowboys when I went to do a talk in southern Arizona in Douglas, and there's a lot of ranches and cowboys there. And Douglas did it very small town type thing, and they did punch and cake. And when I saw them in the audience, I thought they thought it was a party. And I said, watch these men make a beeline for the door when I tell them that young Carlos got seduced in the park by Jesse. And they hung on through the whole thing. They bought the book, got it autographed, and thought it was wonderful.
Yay.
Yeah, that was quite something.
So because we might have some writers, or especially some new writers that have interests, and you've inspired them, what can you describe your writing process and particularly your writing discipline?
Thank you, Bruce. If you are queer, well, anybody, but especially right now, if you are LGBTQ community and listening to this or viewing this, and you think you might want to write, I'm going to beg you to write, because our books are in peril. There are, I mean, young Carlos, I think, would be banned in several states now. Our literature is considered demonic. So what we need to do is put as much literature out as we can. And so if you are thinking about writing a poem, a short story, a joke, whatever, read it. I mean, write it and put it up on the internet, definitely. My writing discipline is I write every morning for 3 hours. I get up, I do a little moving around, and I have a cup of coffee, and I sit down and I go from 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock. That's exactly, I have a timer for it. And at 11 o'clock, I go to the Y and I do a little bit of a workout. And because I sit so long, and I do that. And that to me is very, very essential. The other thing that I do a lot is I change venues as to where I write. Mostly I write in my living room on a desk or on an easy chair on my MacBook, but I will also write in different coffee shops, and I will go to the library on the second floor. I love the second floor with the windows looking out to the plaza, and I will sit there for many hours and write and get up and a drink of water and so on. So changing your venue is really an important thing. And I have, Bruce, a PDF, a one-pager PDF. If you are a writer and listening to this, and we really can't go into a lot of things, but I have a resource page which includes tips on getting going and so on, and the writers that I admire, and a few resources like books or workbooks you might like to be able to get you going on the writing. But the secret is write. I mean, you just have to keep writing and writing and writing. It's a skill. And just like everything else, the more you do it, the better you get.
To that, are there writers that you particularly like, or that you, I mean, we obviously like, but tell me about what you read.
I do a lot of short reading online because here's something I may be weird, but I actually look for information, look for creative thought, not just for the whole story. And that can come from so many resources. You know, surprisingly enough, for me, a remarkable kind of finger in the air or ear to the ground resource for writing is TikTok. I mean, it's only a minute, because as you know, it runs the gamut. TikTok videos, all kinds of things, people dancing and people saying silly things, political, but there's also deep thinkers that go on there and say something that really strikes your imagination. But the other thing, the books that authors that I write, that I like, John Steinbeck was probably the author that first made an impression on me. A book called The Pearl. I read it when I was like 12. It's about a Mexican fisherman in the Baja. Another book that made a big impression on me as I wrote letters to young Carlos was Brokeback Mountain from Annie Proulx. And I love the fact that in 67 pages, she told a remarkable story. I mean, what an economy of words. And then Harper Lee, who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, is a remarkable. I mean, all these books are at the library too, by the way. People don't have to buy them. And there's one book that you probably haven't even heard of. I mean, you have, Bruce, but many of our readers probably haven't heard of. But it's Flannery O'Connor. And wrote a book called A Good Man is Hard to Find. And you can open the page of that book to any page and just really be amazed by what she did with words.
So you not only like them, but you learn from them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's the whole purpose. Yes.
I just want to note that at the end, Carlos is going to give you some resources on how to get in touch with him and get that list that he resources.
Right.
You, again, I go back to your remarkable dialogue with people who have read the book and be in touch with you. You've told me some of the things that you're learning from them or are surprised by or pleased by. Can you tell us just how the book has impacted some of the people?
Some people, the book, the reason this happens is because the book itself, on the back of the book where you have this code, it has my email on it. So I think some people, it's really weird, Bruce, but I don't know exactly why, but a lot of people found it very tearful. I mean, very, very, almost, I don't know the majority of women, but a lot of people cried toward the end of the book. And many of them just turned to, I guess, the email and would send me a note, and maybe it was at a very emotional moment. But there have been people who come out because of the book, and they have told me, I came out to my parents, I came out to someone, or there were people who are supporters or friends of someone who they know, who suspect they know is gay, but they don't have the courage to come out. And they write that they're going to respect it and they're going to wait for them to be ready, which I think is wonderful, because you can't push anyone. Just like, I don't know, Bruce, in the case of love in general, whether you love a friend or you love it's your lover or your life partner, it just, not only do I find that it's genderless, it just seems like it's uncontrollable. You can't really choose who you love. I mean, I kind of think maybe there is a Cupid with arrows that comes and, you fall in love with someone and you didn't really maybe expect it, but all of a sudden you're in love. At the same time, you can't stop loving someone because of someone said so. If you love someone, you struggle. That's what happens so much in the abusive relationships, that you can't give up the person. And in Mexico, Ruth, when I was growing up, when a young lady started dating and fell in love with someone who was undesirable to the family, the mother knew that love was so impossible to control that she would be sent away, like to southern Mexico for 6 months with the aunt, to maybe shake it out of her and meet other people. And really, that's probably the only way you can stop loving someone, is by stop seeing them and pretend they don't exist. But love is there. But on the other hand, you cannot force yourself to love someone. Oh, come on. You know that old story about you will learn to love him. Well, no, I mean, you respect them, but so young Carlos falls in love with Jessie, and no matter who tells him that it's not a good idea, he can't control it. And Jessie brings up another facet of queer stories. We never know if Jessie was really gay throughout the book. You don't know if Jessie is a player, just wanted to feel the moment, or if he's actually loving Carlos and is gay. He doesn't. One reader told me that Jesse reminded him of the many men. He was a male, of the many men that straight men that he always doubted because they seemed to flirt with him. They flirt with him, and I don't know. There's always that enigma.
Got it. If any of you out there that are listening to this have questions, put them in the Q&A chat. I've got lots of questions for Carlos, so we're never going to run out of it. Carlos, artists, and I consider a writer certainly an artist, they tend to critique their own works. So now that you've thought about it, what would you add, change, edit if you were to issue a second printing?
That's never been asked that before. I would probably expand a little bit on the relationship on Tulio. Tulio developed a bit of a fan club.
Tulio is the friend?
The friend. Tulio is the best friend.
Okay.
And because young Carlos was very closeted, Tulio's parents were a lot more liberal, and he would dare to wear a little makeup or do things like that, whereas Carlos was petrified of that because it meant an instant fight and problems with his father. So a lot of people really, Tulio is in the book as a character because he does things that young Carlos cannot. And therefore that's how they build this relationship. So I think one of the things I might do is expand a little bit more on Tulio's reasoning and his life. But in the sequel,
yes, tell us about the sequel.
which I am working on now. The sequel is called Chameleon, or in Spanish, Camaleon. Camaleon, it's actually spelled Camaleon. Because because Carlos grows up and it takes right now goes through his college years and will go into his formal education and his work history initially coming out, and Tulio is going to be there for him all the time, and again experiencing parallel lives but very, very different from each other. Yes, Tulio is so Chameleon I would think would be ready by the fall. That's when I have it with my editor. We're hoping to be able to make that happen. It was a little more challenging from the writer's perspective to write the second book because I didn't have the framework of the setting of my hometown, which was so, it was so easy to work with it that way. But unfortunately, I didn't have that. So I really had to go deep in my imagination, and it's amazing. But the characters eventually begin talking to you. They just tell you this is not something I would do, or this is something I would want to follow up on. And so the story again continues with the characters that Carlos is going to meet along the way, and that becomes the story again for him. But I actually, don't know if I would change anything though, Bruce, because I maybe some of the wording I would go back and review or whatever, and because you can edit for the rest of your life. There's always an edit, but I actually the book is, the story is in New York with a young man who is still working on it as a screenplay. And when he started to tell me the changes he was going to make, I wasn't sure about them because I kind of liked the story the way it was. But the screenplay for a movie, I guess, is different than it is whole different thing. So what I did is I just said, just go ahead and do it, and I won't even. But one of the things he said is that he wanted to get into Facundo, the father, more of his background and why he was so homophobic. That's fine. But frankly, I like the story the way it is.
So do a lot of people, clearly. Now, let me touch on a few of those points that you just made, because I don't think the people here yet know. Screenplay. Somebody's actually wanting to work with you about producing this. Is that right?
There were a dozen, I'm going to just guess, suggestions from people that this would be a great movie. This should be a movie, or it would make a great film. And the book started as a screenplay based on that screenwriting course I took. And then, it kind of went into this whole thing of if it did become a movie, it would need a book. And so then I kind of worked backwards.
Oh,
so the screenplay was the outline of the book, and
okay.
and embellished and with a lot more setting. It's very different to write a screenplay than it is to write a book, but it was good for an outline, and it worked really well. I'm so pleased by where the book has taken me. I've met some incredible people. I've had remarkable experiences. And I think the most gratifying thing is that it seems to have helped some people move along. And I mean, I just wrote something for enjoyment or for greater awareness. But secretly, my idea was that I hope some of the people who still think that we are making this as a choice in our lives get to read it, or even just read a review about it and begin doubting that it is something that we choose. So I'm very pleased with that. Very pleased.
Great. You talk about earlier about writing as a skill, and that it sounds like you may have developed a greater skill going into the sequel. Where are you on your writing skill process?
I have to say that if you want to write, I mean, we all have our process. I definitely, and I will it will be on the PDF if you provide me your email, which I'll give you my email for in a minute. You have to read, for me, the Bible of writing is a book by a man whose name is John Turley, Turly. It's called The Anatomy of a Story. And it really breaks up what should be contained in the story, the character, the arch enemy, the plot, all these different things. And then there's a battle, and then has to be a change in the way they think at the end, which is the ending. And I devoured that book. And the other thing is, if you find reading, anybody here that finds reading cumbersome, because, for example, I don't read a lot of authors while I'm writing, because I admire them so much. They have a tendency to influence totally what I'm doing. So I will read more things online and rely on my imagination more than anything. And then when I finish, I like, after I published Letters to Young Carlos a year ago in April, I had a whole hiatus of reading, which I had to catch up on because I have not read. But the craft of writing is very simple and very complex. The simplicity is that you have to just grab that pen or put that finger on the keyboard and do it every day, and not necessarily judge it. like in this book, in this page that I have, I share with you a thing that I call simmer. You know, I write something, Bruce, this morning,
Mhm.
and I go, that's kind of good, you know, and then I leave it alone for a day, 2 days, maybe 3 days. Then I come back to it and I look at it with a fresh pair of eyes, and I'm surprised at the insight that I have on what I wrote and how I could make it better, or how I could change it, or oh, what was I thinking? This is terrible. So simmering for me is and I just made that up as I go along. The other thing that's very key to the book, or to the writing process, is you think you're going to remember something that came to you when you were in the supermarket. Oh yeah, I'll remember that, but you don't. So I used to have a notebook that I carried here, one of those little spiral ones. I carried in my pocket with a pen, and I would stop and I would write just a couple of keywords so that I would remember when I got to my writing the next morning. But now we have our phones we could dictate to. So you'll find me talking on my phone, to my phone, all the time. But when you get that spurt, you have to make sure you write it down. And writing comes in spurts. Like I'm going to say today is Saturday. Last week, Wednesday and Thursday of last week, something bit me, and it just started flowing and flowing and flowing. And I didn't stop. I didn't just do the three. First day I wrote 8 hours. The second day I wrote 7, because it was coming. It was coming, and I was gonna grab it.
Good. We have a question in the Q&A thing, but I see that someone is going to answer that live. So I'm going to ask you the final question from me, and then we'll turn it back and see how things are going. Because this is my final one, and I'll put a smile on, so be prepared. Okay. You said you started writing for enjoyment and awareness, and some people who are writing out there always really want to know this question, but are afraid to ask. So are you getting filthy rich from selling this book?
No, you do not make money on self-publishing like I have. It is a treacherous road. I mean, it can be, I should say. No, I'm going to just break it down for you. The book is $19.95 with Amazon, and I make $9 on each book. So I made some money, yes, but and certainly not to live on. I mean, that's certainly not anything like. What's more lucrative for a writer, and I'm going to sneak this in, Bruce, what's more lucrative for a writer is to write for magazines like I do. I write for Modern Salon magazine, and they pay me per word. And that's just something that really helps a lot.
Okay,
you know,
got it. That's good. I'm going to turn it back because there is that question we want to get to. And there's someone is going to answer that live. And then if we could, we're at 10:54. So then if Carlos, you would share your final thoughts and send us off with whatever you would like.
Okay.
So
all right.
If you would, okay. Bruce, please read the question. Okay. Carlos, will we ever see a memoir?
I don't know. That's really the sincere answer. You know, it's very hard because people, I don't think my life is that interesting. I really don't. That's why there is a young Carlos, which I made up. Some of it comes from me, but the vast majority of it was totally made up. I mean, Facundo, the father, it was a terrible man. My father was wonderful. I mean, I had a great upbringing. It wasn't anything like that. So I don't think my life is that remarkable, but I mean, maybe we could get to that. But right now, I am so into chameleon that I don't think I could think of anything else.
And then we have another question here. Do you miss young Carlos?
Yes. I miss I really do wish I could go back and hug him.
Mm.
There is the sweet innocence that we all had growing up, that sweet intention of being a good person that just you can see as you get older and the forces working against it. I love the quote from The King and I that says, you have to be taught how to hate, because really we are so beautiful as we grow up. And you know, I would love to go back and see him, spend at least a minute with him and tell him, you were such a cool kid and you did your best.
Got it. Thank you. Carlos, I see that Karyn is on, but also, would you have a final word for us?
Yes, for everyone, I want to thank you all for being here. And if you are here and you are queer or in or out, or a parent, a supporter of LGBTQ that wishes us well, I thank you for being here. And I am very proud of being gay. You have no idea. If I was born again and reincarnated, I would probably want it again or something similar, because I feel what we do, we model for the world and for humanity the many aspects of love. And we remind everyone that nobody owns love. Nobody has a right to its definition. And therefore, if you are there and if you love with all your heart and love everyone as much as you can, and I think life is going to smile back on you.
Karyn.
Bravo, bravo. Thank you so much. We are just so thrilled that you joined us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for giving some acknowledgement to the library and our resources when you mentioned the books that have had an influence on you.
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone, please check out our website, www.library.pima.gov. You can borrow Carlos's book or any of the books that he mentioned earlier. Of course, go buy the book too. Thank you so much, both. And Bruce.
Before we go, how do we get in touch with you, Carlos?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, if you would like that PDF, that resource, it's CHALE, Charlie45 @gmail.com. It's CHALE45 @gmail.com. And I would be happy to, or look for me on Facebook, Carlos Valenzuela in Tucson. I'll be happy to send you the PDF.
Okay.
Wonderful.
We're all going to go grab young Carlos and read for the afternoon. Thank you so much. Okay.
Great. Have a great
Thank you
weekend,
all.
everyone. Thank you for
Bye-bye.
being with me. Bye.
Bye-bye.